1. I live on Staten Island, New York. It's pretty small and no one really knows about it. Staten Island has a few high schools such as Curtis, McKee, Port Richmond, New Dorp, and a few more that aren't important to the story. This all started when I was a freshman in high school. I am now a junior. I went to New Dorp High School, and in that high school I actually met a friend that I met on Instagram. For this story she'll be known as A. One day A wanted to hang out after school, and she said that 2 of her old friends were going to meet up with us. I said it was fine and didn't really care. When the time came, only one of her friends showed up. I'll call him Alec. He seemed to be really shy, and with me being a freshman, wanting to be new friends, I tried to talk to him. This was the biggest mistake of my life. He only ended up saying 2 words the whole day. I went home after that and didn't think much about that day. Fast forward to 2 weeks later, my friend A texted me saying that Alec had a huge crush on me. I told her that I didn't like him at all, and he seemed sort of weird to me. I also had a boyfriend at that time, so it was a huge nope for him. 2 days later, he DMs me on Instagram saying that he likes me. I told him that I barely even know him. In fact, I don't even remember his name. He introduces himself, and that was that. I didn't agree to be his friend, I just thought of him as an acquaintance at the time. After school, I would always hang out with my friends, and sometimes with my boyfriend. One day I was hanging out with my friend, walking to the 57 bus stop to go home, when I saw him across the street. He was just looking at me, so I continued to walk, and when I made eye contact with him, he just walked faster. He got on the same bus as me, and then got 1 stop later. I ignored it, and I didn't really tell anyone, not even my boyfriend yet. The next day my friend said that he was going to come again, and I agreed to hang out with him despite what happened yesterday. I asked him why he was here yesterday, and he denied everything. He said he wasn't even near the school, and he was at Curtis. I dropped it and wasn't that weirded out anymore, because at least I figured out what school he went to. He did the same thing a few more times before I agreed to be his friend. I told him everything about myself, which was stupid of me considering how weird he was. A week later he would confess, saying that he was in love with me. I immediately shut him down and told him that I had a boyfriend. He didn't take this well and decided to write paragraphs saying how I was worth it and cursing me out. I ignored him and finally told my boyfriend. We just sort of laughed everything off, saying how bipolar he is. Later on I got a DM from Alec saying that he was sorry, and if we could still be friends. I'm the type of person who has a hard time saying no to people, so I agreed. My boyfriend went to the school that was right next to Curtis, so he could often see Alec a lot. Every time he saw Alec, he would always be staring at him and giving him a death stare type of look. Again, we just laughed it off, and said he was just jealous. I won't bore you with every single encounter of him, but basically he would always ask me out, I would reject him, he would throw a fit and curse me out, I would ignore him, he would apologize, and I would agree to be his friend again. That's how the cycle went. I forgot to include that he was really aggressive when he was angry. I think this was the reason why I always agreed to be his friend. One day out of nowhere, Alex said that he hated my boyfriend, and if he could, he would actually beat him up. I had enough of him, so I just ran home and told my sister everything. I blocked his number and his Instagram. I convinced my mom to transfer me out of New Dorp. Reminder that most days he would skip school just to go to New Dorp to see me. He took a 40-minute bus ride just to stalk me after school. Also, this all happened in just the middle of my freshman year. I transferred to Port. I thought I would have a new, fresh start. I don't know how it happened, but me and Alec became friends again. I think it was because my friend A somehow convinced me to talk to him again. Me and my boyfriend broke up during this time, and Alec used this opportunity to ask me out, and saying that there was nothing stopping me from saying no. I finally gathered the courage to tell him everything I felt, and I wasn't comfortable around him, that I didn't like him even as a friend anymore. That only started the cycle again. Me and my ex-boyfriend were still friends, and this angered Alex so much. He actually told me that he was planning on fighting him now. I finally told my friend A what was happening, and she talked to him. For the first time, he actually left me alone. Fast forward to the middle of sophomore year, and guess who transferred to my school? Lo and behold, it was Alec. Thankfully, I didn't have any classes with him, but he did have the same lunch as me. He would just come up to my lunch table and just sit there, not saying anything. I told my friend, I'll call her Izzy, everything about him, but she didn't know what he looked like, so she found it weird when I stopped talking every time Alec was at the table. I finally told her that that was him, and she was actually relieved to know. Turns out she had a few classes with him, and every time he was in her class, Alec would just stare at her. He followed me home. It wasn't that big of a deal because I lived in front of the school. I forgot to say he created 4 other Instagram accounts and changed his phone number just to talk to me. On one of his Instagram accounts, he DM'd me saying if we could talk. One day after school, I decided to talk to him. He convinced me that he changed, so I gave him another shot. I should have known it was just a mask. He was still obsessive over me. It came to a point that sometimes he would just be outside my house. So I created a plan. I know it was mean, but I thought it would have worked. It was perfect, at least in my mind. The plan was finally to go out with him and just treat him bad and break his heart for him starting to hate me. When I started to flirt, he quickly asked me out and I agreed. That day after school was so uncomfortable. He was always trying to kiss my neck and didn't hesitate to kiss me at all. My parents also convinced me that he would be good for me. I tried so hard not to let the tears fall down. Every time Alec kissed me, I always had my eyes opened. I could not pretend to be in love with him at all. Somehow I managed to make everyone believe that I liked him. The only ones I didn't want them finding out were my friends because they knew me. When time came to finally break it off, he actually told me it would be better for me and him to remain friends. I was the happiest I've ever been in my life. That night, out of nowhere, he wrote me paragraphs saying that he regrets meeting me, how I was never good enough for him. He even called me a slut and other names. Thinking my plan had worked, I decided to ignore him and try to live my life free. We didn't talk for a few months until he came in front of my house and told me he wants to be friends again. I finally told him no and ignored him. My mom found out I was ignoring him and she demanded that I talk to him again. Scared of my mom, I stupidly agreed to be his friend, and he found out I moved. One day he insisted on walking me home. I said no, not wanting him to know my new house. This didn't stop him at all, he just followed me home. I successfully managed to make sure he didn't know where I lived the first 2 times. The third time was a fail because my dog ran away and I had to chase after him to bring him to the house. Later, after I finally cut him off, he called me a bitch and other names. I didn't care anymore because I was trying to be finally free of him. After that, he decides to stalk me every single day without saying. He was just staring at me. One day out of nowhere, he yelled at me, saying everything he thought of me. I just stayed quiet and listened because if I just listened, he would have nothing more to say. After it was all over, I wasn't sad or mad, I was laughing. Sure, it was fucked up because he said I caused him pain, but I didn't care about him, just like how he didn't care about how uncomfortable or scared he made me. For the rest of that school year, he continued to follow me home. That brings us to summer of 2019. He would just stalk my Instagram with many accounts he made. He would watch all of my stories and also all of my ex-boyfriend's stories. My whole group of friends sort of made a whole joke out of him. He DM'd me a few times during summer, acting like everything was cool. I still have those texts. During the summer, I got into a relationship, but never went public with it because of him. The summer was pretty uneventful for Alec. Until school started again, which brings me to my junior. I forgot to say that when he found out where my house was, he decided not only to stalk me home after school, but wait for me outside my house and stalk me to school. This still continues on to this day. If he ever decides to get close to me, I will not hesitate to actually use violence this time. I've had enough of you trying to scare me, making me feel useless. So Alec, if you're listening to this, or reading it, I'll think twice before you start talking to me again. Because this time, I'll make your life a living hell. 2. When I was about 11 years old, I would go to a small town in Wyoming to see friends of my dad's. They had a daughter that was my age. Let's call her Jay. Jay lived about 3 blocks away from a small school with a playground. We would go to that park for almost 6 hours every time we came over. My sister came along with us as well. We will call her N. On one of the days we went to that park, it was late, so it was getting dark, but we decided to stay anyway. Which wasn't a smart choice whatsoever. I thought we should leave because I had saw a black SUV parked on the other side of the road from the park just sitting there, with someone in it. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to freak Anne or Jay out. We were all sitting on the swing set at that time, and then Jay said something about the black SUV. She said, "You see that black car? I think the driver is staring at us." Then it turned around and came into the parking lot. At that point, we were already starting to walk back to Jay's house, but the way we needed to go was the way the black car came in. But we just kept walking. The black windows of the car started rolling down while the front windows were already down, and they were blasting music. The car was filled with 5 men that looked about 18 to 21. The driver asked if we would come with them, and then we all started running the opposite way of Jay's house to the back of the school we were at. We booked it into some bushes and stayed there for about 15 minutes to wait them out. I don't know what would have happened to us if one of them got out of the car or if we would have went the other way. To those 5 guys that freaked us the hell out? Let's not meet. 3. So this happened to me a few years ago when I was a freshman in college. I'm now a junior. And it's still insane to think about. At this point in my 20-female young adult life, I've been around the block and I've definitely had lots of freaky encounters with men since entering college, but I've always considered this one to be one of the worst. For a little background, I go to school in the Boston area, but there's a local burger chain that has a few locations sprinkled around the city. I believe they have a partnership with Fenway, so it's a fairly popular business, and I loved going there with my friends in the first few months I was at college. One Saturday night in December, I went there with a few friends after we'd smoked a little and went to get something to eat. We walked in and it was pretty crowded, so we all got in line and waited to order. Something I've discovered about myself since being in college and dealing with lots of creepy guys is that I have a really strong sense of intuition, and I can honestly tell when someone's going to be weird with me. We'd eventually advance towards the front of the line, and there was only one register open. One of the men came working in the kitchen, it's an open kitchen concept, saw me and came over to open another register before calling me over. I was waiting in line behind my friend, who was just one person away from being at the register, so I thought it was odd that he hasn't asked her to come over since she was next in line. Plus, the line had died down at that point, and a second register wasn't really needed, especially since they only had one when the line was longer. So I already knew something was up, but I figured it was going to be a typical being hit on experience, so I tried not to worry. I got to the register and he started chatting me up, asking how my night was, etc. I tried to be polite, but really focused more on ordering my hot dog. So I gave him my order and paid with my debit card. As is customary, 2 receipts were printed out, one of which being for the business to keep. This is important. I took my own receipt and went to sit down with my friends until my order was called. I honestly don't remember if he took any orders after mine, but regardless, while I was waiting I noticed he kept stealing looks at me, and I tried to brush it off. Another employee was bringing out trays and calling orders, so some of my friends had just gotten their food. Eventually, my order was finished, and the man from the register realized it was mine, and brought it over to the counter himself to give it to me personally. I didn't even look him in the face when I took it because I had such a weird feeling about the whole thing that kept getting worse. While we sat there eating, he kept staring at me, and I mentioned it to my friends, but they tried to reassure me and told me not to worry because they were there. When we'd finished eating, he came over and offered to throw away our trash, specifically mine first, which we declined. It was still packed, so it wasn't really normal that this guy was trying so hard to cater to one group, and no one else, especially when he was supposed to be in the kitchen. We left and things seemed fine, but I kept having this feeling that something bad was going to happen, that this situation hasn't already ended. The next day I was busy doing some studio work on a short film. I'm an animation major, so I was at the arts building for most of the morning. Once I came home, I took a nap because I'd been animating basically all day, and I woke up around 5 p.m. I checked my phone to see what time it was and saw I had gotten a request on Facebook Messenger. I didn't recognize the name, but I can honestly say that in the back of my mind, I had a horrible feeling that it was the cashier guy from the night before, And I was right. I opened Messenger, looked at his Facebook profile picture, and immediately felt one of the most sickening, shocking feelings I've ever felt. I looked through his photos, still absolutely shocked, and basically had an anxiety attack. He sent me a friend request and multiple messages that said exactly this. "Oh my god, no way, I can't believe it's you." "I believe so, but I was scrolling through Facebooks and believe I seen you yesterday." He then tried to add me on Messenger. "I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. I'm just in shock you popped up." First of all, this guy is full of shit. There is legitimately no way that he wasn't intentionally searching for my profile, for numerous reasons. First, the Facebook algorithm really only shows you people that you might know through mutual friends. I was 18 at the time, and all of my recommended friends had either gone to school with me or had mutual friends. There were literal pictures of me at my high school graduation from that year. This guy was almost 30 years old. Clearly he knew how young I was, had no mutual friends, and lived nowhere near me. Second, my profile picture at the time was my dog, so he wouldn't have known it was me unless he'd purposely been looking, none of that just scrolling through bullshit. And lastly, I'm one of only 2 people on Facebook with my name, and my last name is fucking hard to spell. There's seriously no way you'd find me without actually looking. So, of course, I was absolutely terrified and was trying to figure out how he could possibly have tracked me down. But then I remembered the second receipt, how I'd used my debit card and how my name was printed on that paper. That was the only way he could have figured it out. So I assume he kept that receipt for himself and wrote my name down for later. And then I remembered that I'd worn my collegiate sweatshirt to the restaurant that night, and how my college was also listed on my profile. It was literally just a few minutes down the road from where he worked. Panicking, I told my friends, who were also incredibly shocked, and we tried to figure out what to do. We went and ate at the dining hall, discussing what had happened, and eventually I ended up back in my dorm. Upon getting to my room, I realized he tried to video chat with me while I was at dinner, following it up with, "Didn't mean that," but I'm sure he would have meant it if I'd answered. We ended up calling the restaurant and get stuck listening to a directory. So my friend left a message explaining the situation. I was too freaked out, and we hoped for an eventual response. They literally never even got back to us. Meanwhile, I called my other friend who commutes from home, and told her about what happened. She told her mom, who immediately called the restaurant and actually got a person on the other line. She explained the situation, and they seriously didn't even do anything. All she got was a half-hearted, "Yeah, we'll talk to him," but said they wouldn't fire him and nothing more. There was really no feeling of resolution here. During this whole thing, he sent me another message around 10:30, clearly desperate to pry a response out of me. "I'm just so curious if it's you." Needless to say, I was extremely freaked out by this whole thing and of course never responded. Took screenshots of everything and went to campus security the next day to give them a description of this guy just in case. I ended up not finishing my film and showing up late to class because I was literally too petrified to leave the house. Luckily, my teacher was understanding. I do know that somebody clearly did talk to him because he blocked me on Facebook a few days later, but I still felt uneasy. Time went on and I eventually felt better about the whole thing, but my friends and I have never gone back to that restaurant. It was kind of a bummer because I really liked it there, but I was advised by campus security to stay away. Plus, I wasn't really keen on potentially running into him again anyway. I've since made my profile more private, and a lot of my information is now hidden from public view. I was also afraid to use my debit card for a while, which sucked, but it's not an issue anymore. So, creepy fucking cashier guy who used my debit card to suck me? Let's never meet. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 433. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. I think I've actually finally gone mad. I just got to the end of the recording for all the videos I had to do to get my little vacation. It's a good feeling. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know what my name is. I think it's Ron or something. Or Jam. I don't know. Jam? Jam sandwich. It's an odd name for a person. Anyway. No, I haven't really gone crazy, but I am feeling very, very relieved to have finally got to the end of the recording session, and ironically, as you guys get this, I will just be coming back and starting to record again for the following week's videos, or rather the following day's videos. Good to know I can do. I've never done a recording session as big as this before. Usually with my weeks off, I usually do like 2 weeks in advance, but I ended up recording much ahead this time just so I'd have plenty of time to do it. And it worked out. It has actually been less stressful, and I should get done not as early as I was hoping, but certainly earlier than I would have otherwise. I'd basically have got done just in time to start my week off on Monday. This way, I might have everything prepped by the time I go to bed tonight, and I'll just need to maybe upload on Thursday, which is awesome. Okay, with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.